Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. Now, friends, a lot of times we will talk about self-care, right? It's a natural part of being a successful and thriving and sustainable business owner. That's the truth, bottom line. But what happens when, say, you've got something that's a little bit more than a head cold or a little bit more than a bit of back pain? What happens when you've got a chronic illness or chronic pain to deal with? Like, how do you run a business then? Aha, that's what we're going to simplify today. My special guest today is Nikita Williams. She's a digital marketer turned creative coach. Plus, she's this podcast host of She's Crafted to Thrive and an Endo Warrior. Her goal is to empower women in creative businesses who live with a chronic illness to own their story in order to build a business and life that thrives for them. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast today, Nikita Williams. Hey, Nikita.
Hi, Mary. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm so glad you're here. And I feel like this is a really important conversation that people are not having yet. And I think that it's important to pull back the magic Wizard of Oz curtain and let's get real for a second. So first and foremost, how would you define a chronic illness? What would you say it is?
I know there's a lot of definitions out there for chronic illness, but for me and for a lot of the people that I work with and clients and my listeners, I really think that a chronic illness is something that there's not a cure for. There may be remissions, but it's not a cure. Mm-hmm. Something you deal with every single day. It could be great some days, but it's always there with you. There's nothing you can do really about it except maybe different diets or a lifestyle change, but it's still a part of you. It's kind of the breath you take. It's there no matter what you do. So I do know there are some people that might have something chronic that's temporary, and that can be chronic. That can be a chronic illness. Say you had a major accident or injury, and that's going to be with you. You're going to be in rehab for months, or even a couple of years. But I'm really talking to the women who may have endometriosis or lupus or MS. And those are things that, science hasn't caught up yet with, and we're still dealing with those every day.
So what's been your own journey towards realizing that you have a chronic illness? You mentioned in your bio that you're an Endo Warrior. What does that mean?
It's so funny when I hear someone else say Endo Warrior, it makes me laugh a little bit because I just started to accept that word. Yeah. It's been several years, before I was dealing with a lot of symptoms, didn't really know what it was. And I know this is a story that a lot of women, you may not have a diagnosis, but you know that there is something there. Something is wrong. Something's not right. And that was part of my story with endometriosis. It had been years before I had gotten a diagnosis. So for me, endometriosis has completely shifted just how I deal with life and how I deal with my business, how I deal with my family. But to be honest, it took me a long time to accept that coined term Endo Warrior, because at first there was a lot of shame. And I call it the endo shame, or it could be any kind of illness shame, but it's definitely a shame that you kind of have because you're dealing with it and you don't know how to capture it in your life and accept what it is.
Yeah. I have to admit, when I think of the word Endo Warrior, the very first thing that comes to my mind is Xena Warrior Princess. You've got your big old armor on, you're big old tall girl. You're just I'm going to smash this down to the ground, right? Nothing can stop me. But I realize that, there are days you probably feel like that. And then there's a lot of days where you probably don't feel like that. What are the symptoms for people who have endo?
So if you have endometriosis, you probably are dealing with what most women deal with on a day-to-day basis with PMS. Yeah. You're having cramps, you're having pain, you're having heavy bleeding, you're having a long period of time where you're dealing with angst. It's a very intense pain. You have cysts. Most women have what they're called chocolate cysts when it comes with endometriosis, which they get really big. They can become the sizes of grapefruits,
right,
and burst. Ugh. And they hurt they hurt.
They hurt a lot.
They hurt a lot. So there's, like I said, there's cramping. There's just I think the biggest thing with endometriosis is that at first it was thought that this was only happening to you when you were on your actual cycle. But the symptoms happen consistently. They're happening all the time. They're not just cyclic, even though they can increase and get worse. But over time, they can really they can bring you down. It's real pain. Like, put you in the hospital like you're having a baby, but you're not having a baby. You're just having pain. You're just being serious.
That sounds like pretty crappy to me. I mean, and I hear that also from friends of mine who have endometriosis. You know, there's always this constant tiredness or feeling like you have a lack of energy, and you know, the pelvic pain. Gosh, I just can only imagine what that's like. So,
and there's brain fog. There's a brain fog that happens with it too, because you're so mentally and physically drained. And endometriosis is an onset to a lot of other problems you might have, things like IBS or Crohn's or chronic stomach issues, because they're all in that same little nasty area. And so they cause a lot of other problems for you. So it's usually not just endo, it's other things that come along with it.
And if any of these symptoms are sounding very familiar to you, make sure to click the link in our show notes for this episode at thesimplifierspodcast.com, because I'll put some links in there for you guys to just go find information about this and then start to go find the right doctor to talk to you about. So how long ago did you get diagnosed?
I was diagnosed in 2009 with endometriosis, and in 2013 I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. 2003 I was diagnosed with PCOS. So I have a couple of different things. Those are just the three highlights of
you've
my
got like a cocktail, right?
Yes,
Holy
exactly.
Cow. And so you started your business way back when, right, as well? Or you had a photography business, right?
Right. Yeah. So my husband and I started a photography business. Actually, I started off because I just didn't want to work for anyone else. I was tired of working for people, and I've had a history of working with other small businesses in their business, but I had always loved photography. And at the time, my symptoms that I was dealing with, they weren't as intense as they are today. So my husband and I, we kind of did our own little photography business, and we loved it. I just couldn't keep up with it. We were doing wedding photography and event photography, and that's a lot on the body.
That's a legit, So little known secret, the Simplifiers, I started it 16 years ago, and the first 10 years of the business was an events company. So we produced large scale corporate events and weddings of all shapes and sizes. Girl, I know, like, you're on your feet 12, 13, 14-hour days on the weekends. Oh yeah, and still working 40, 50 hours a week during the week, you know, so like it is a lot. Like my brain can't fathom. Put on top of that brain fog, pelvic pain, heavy periods, tiredness, depression, all the things that can come from, you know, the specific chronic illness that you were struggling with as well. Gosh, So what do you do? Like, how do you even begin to manage that? Did you tell your clients about your chronic illness, or?
You know, so back in the day, no. Like I said, back in the day, I was still trying to accept that what was going on, and I didn't really have a clear understanding of what endometriosis was, because even when you're diagnosed with endometriosis, a lot of doctors just say, "Oh, it's really just like you're having a bad period." So that idea of that sticks with you. So you're like, well, I'm not going to tell people that I'm just having a bad period, because really, you know, who wants to know about that?
Right. And
so today, I should say in the last 3 or 4 years, I have been very vocal with, that's a part of my story. If you go anywhere on my website and my Instagram, I talk about my endo story, because I feel like there needs to be more women and more people that talk about it, because it's not just a bad period. And there's this faux pas of like, you know, if you're having pain and if you're going through this and you're a woman, you need to just suck it up and tell no one and go through it. And, you know, a man gets a headache and they're like, oh, go home. You know, it's a completely different world. So I think there's a lot that you can tell your clients is definitely okay. Here's what I say. If you are comfortable with it, it all starts with you. It all starts with where you are in your process. Like I said, I didn't used to, but I started to own that power, because there is power in accepting and telling people, like, look, everybody's got stuff. It may not be a chronic illness. It may not, be something so painful to them, but everybody has something.
Yeah.
in their life. And so if you feel comfortable with sharing that, I feel like you should do it with no fear.
Yeah. And I think it also says a lot about you as a service provider to your clients. I think if you're upfront
Yes.
and honest with people of like, this is part of my story, this is something that I'm working with and I have solutions towards, and
Right.
it's not a pity party. It's not like,
No.
oh, poor me, you know, my
Hmm.
martyrdom and all of the things. I mean, I think about my personal trainer, Adam. He's type 1 diabetes and diabetic, and he is an athlete, you know, so he told me this from day one of working with him. He's like, look, you know, every now and again I have to check my blood sugar level, and that's just part of what I do. You know, so I think there is something to being upfront and honest with your clients right from the get-go. But then also, I think that there's something that is very healthy in putting those boundaries in place and saying, like,
Yes.
hey, girl, you know, yeah, I'll be your wedding photographer. We're going to be on our feet for 14 hours. This is where I take best care of myself so that I can give you the very best photos for your
Right.
wedding. Like, I think a client would appreciate that.
Yeah, and especially if you're a photographer, I've coached a couple of photographers who have a chronic illness, and I always say, I mean, it's super easy in photography to get a second you. Like I call them your second you, someone that's second shooting, someone that's able to calm the client when they're having their meltdown about, the flowers not being there, whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
But you need another person or two, especially if you're doing weddings. God forbid, if you're doing weddings and it's just you need to take a moment, sit down and find another person to be there with
Yes.
you, because you have to take those times to like sit down and recoup and hydrate and, get your mind right so that you can be at your top creativity level.
No, I 100% agree. Yeah. And, I think that comes with time and experience. Like, when you're first starting out, you're like, oh, I can do it all. I can do all the things. Look at me. I'm so amazing. And then you're like,
Mhm.
oh, yeah, I can't actually do it all. It's not a good idea to do it all. No one's expecting me to do it all,
Yeah, let me tell you a funny story real quick
Yeah.
about this. I was, my husband and I was shooting a wedding, and I was trying to be that person. I was trying to do it all. And I went to go kneel to take a picture of this little girl. And, I'm in my 20s, so this shouldn't be hard for me, but it was a long day. It was towards the end of the day. And I literally looked back at my husband and was like, I can't get up, because we had already been on our feet at that time after. It was like 8 hours.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I can't get up. And he's like, what do you mean you can't get up? I'm like, I can't. And so in front of the client and all of the family, we're, here's my husband trying to carry me up. And it's just like so embarrassing. But if I had just taken the time to take care of myself and just go sit down, acknowledge I need to rest for a minute, I wouldn't have had that moment. Like that wouldn't be a story that I'm telling Mary on the Simplifiers podcast. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you really got to take that time to create that, those systems and those people in your place to kind of tell you, look, you need to chill out. Seriously.
Yeah. So, okay, that dovetails right straight into what you've told me off the camera is there's a 3-step process to truly thriving through your chronic illness as a business owner. Can you lead us through that?
Yeah. So 3 things. The first one is that you need to accept it. We give a lot of energy and power to it when we're trying to fight against it. The best way I can describe it is as if you're running in one place, like you're on a treadmill and you're not going anywhere. Literally, you're exerting energy, but you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And so if you're not accepting that, it's okay. Like acceptance doesn't mean that you don't have you can't succeed. It doesn't mean that you're not going to grow. It doesn't mean that there could be a change in your chronic illness where you found better ways to manage it. It just means that you now have acknowledged this is a part of me. This is a part of my life. And now I can make better choices so that I can thrive better. That's all acceptance is.
Yeah.
It's thriving better. That's all.
And owning it.
Yeah.
For sure. Okay.
Yeah. And number 2 is to create systems. I know it's hard. I'm not like a type A person. Like I'm not a very let's write everything down and put everything in a plan. So even with a lot of creative people, some of them are very type A, which is always interesting to me, but some are not. They're like all over the place. And I always say I break everything down in 3s. So whatever systems that need to be automated, whether it's your onboarding process, whether it's your editing process, whether it's especially if you're a photographer, when I'm speaking about editing, obviously, or even if you're a graphic designer and you've got processes that can be automated, automate them. Because if you are having a bad day and you're down and out, the stress of trying to get it done when you could have just had it automated, it's so much easier for you. And then have a person that you trust. That's part of that system. Have a person, a VA. I know Mary has the VA system. I believe VAs can be one of the biggest assets to your business. If they know you, they get inside your business, you don't really have to worry about the systems. They'll create them for you if you want. So you just need to find people and do things that allow you to breathe and take a moment. So when you have those bad days that come out of the blue or not come out of the blue, you have something set up. And you can just be like, I'm good,
Yeah. And well, before we move on to number 3, I think that's so true because when you're just starting out in your business, the first couple of years, cash might be a bit tight. You're just testing out a new concept or a new launch. And yeah, I hear it. You have to kind of pull yourself in and do all the things because you're still sort of learning what are all the things I actually do, like what am I providing to the client? And I get that. But as soon as you can start to delegate certain aspects of like your workload, your what I call lower yielding tasks, the admin stuff, the paperwork, the chasing, the this, the that, the stuff that doesn't light you up inside, that's the stuff that you delegate off to a VA, a virtual assistant. And I think that's the truth. And this comes from a long time for myself, 16 years of running a business that, for the longest time, I didn't hire a person and trying to do all the things all the time. And it's just not sustainable. Even if you are perfectly fit and healthy, like it's totally not sustainable. You have to bring in a quality team and surround yourself with people who are smarter than you in order for you to thrive.
Yeah, there's no business that makes it to the top by themselves. It's not possible. Even like you said, even in the best of health. But even more importantly, because you have a thing. So that's why number 1 is accept it. Because if you can accept it, you then understand that I need people. I need systems. And you're so right. When you're first starting off in your business, you're hustling hard. You're not even paying attention to what you've got going on. You're pushing through the pain, which probably has caused more pain for you today. Let's just be honest.
Yep.
It's caused a lot more issues today now that you've gotten past that 3-year mark. You're going into your business for the 4th or 5th year. You're probably starting to really feel those last 3 years, especially if you have a chronic illness. And so now, if you have the time, and I know that a lot of your audience is at that stage, but if you have people in your corner that are just starting out in their business, be there for them, especially if they have a chronic illness. I don't want to take that out of the role because the sooner you do it, the better it is for your body.
Yeah.
The better it is for you to continue doing what you love the longer period of time.
And if you're in that kind of 4 to 7 year mark of your business, it's likely that it's grown and scaled so much bigger than you could possibly handle. So, clients are now going to be assigned to other people on your team as the lead and that you're just coming in as a creative director or, overseeing the work that they're actually executing on your behalf. So yes, this is part of the growth process, part of the journey of running your own business. Okay, so take us to step 3 of how to thrive.
Step 3 is self-care. Self-care is one of those really, I love the word, but I hate the word because it's so very buzzworthy.
Yeah.
But it's important. It's very important. And it doesn't mean a lot. It doesn't mean that you have to do a lot. It just means that you need to take time throughout your day. And every day you have to take time throughout your day. So how you wake up is how you end the day. That's how I believe it starts. How you wake up is how you end the day. So take the time to, do deep breathing exercises. That's self-care. It's not getting your nails done and going to the massage place, blah, blah, blah. But self-care is really taking care of your health and your mind. And so if you take that time to do that deep breathing, it's really helpful because it calms you down. Stress is the number one thing that affects any chronic illness. You can look it up on Google. Stress is not the good thing for you. It's not good for anybody, but it's definitely not good for your chronic illness. So when you are taking those deep breaths, just think about things that you're grateful for. Be positive. It's one of those things that you cannot do because the negativeness of the day, you're going to have challenges throughout the day. Start the morning off with being grateful and breathful. I know that sounds funny, but it's definitely a number one thing to do in your self-care is take care, breathe.
Yeah. And Nikita, it's the truth. And I think that we all need to hear it about 10 bazillion times before it really sinks in. And maybe this right now is the 10th bazillionth time that you've heard this, if you're listening to this episode right now. But maybe something different is starting to open up in your brain because you start to wonder, like, is it possible for me to continue at this pace? Is it really sustainable? Is this actually the life that I want to lead? And I dare say that most that would be listening right now would say, hang on, why did I jump off the corporate 9 to 5? Why did I start a business that is only making me physically and mentally miserable? So yeah, I think that your point is well taken, is that when you truly slow down and focus on self-care, taking care of yourself daily is the little stuff. It's the 3 deep breaths. It's looking up at the sky. It's starting with a cup of hot lemon water instead of going straight for the triple espresso,
Yes,
it's saying no to the things that are not serving you.
And people.
Yeah.
Say no to the people. Come on, y'all. Can I get an amen on this? Because people will drain you.
Yes.
Like people, even your medical team, and this is part of the self-care too, you need to make sure that the people that are helping take care of your chronic illness are positive people who believe what you say, who are going to stand up for you. They're going to be as a hard advocate as much as you are, because you don't have the energy or the time or the mind space to deal with negativity. You just don't.
Yeah.
You shouldn't deal with it. It's okay to say no. You've gotten to this point in your business for a reason. You've worked hard, you've put in the work, but now is the time to say no. If you haven't been exercising that word, and yes, no is self-care. No is self-care. Because if you don't say no, you're going to be saying yes to a lot of things that are going to continue to bring you down and affect how long you can do what you love.
Yeah.
You got to say no. Yeah. That's a part of self-care too. So you really got to, hone in on that word and find the right people to really connect with you and, build you up. Positivity is the best. I mean, there's a scripture that comes to mind. I'm, a very scriptural person, that the spirit cannot be sustained with wicked things. You can be crushed by that spirit. And when you already are dealing with something so negative, because let's be honest, chronic illness is it's not fun. It's not all, roses. We accept it and we try to stay positive, but every day you're fighting. Hence the word warrior. You're fighting to have a positive day, to go to work, to support the people that are on your team. You're fighting every day. You don't need to be fighting negative people.
Right. And how does it feel in your body when you are about to make a big decision? Do you feel it in your body, or do you think it in your brain? What's your process to getting to the heck yeah or the hell no?
Yeah. So for me, I'm very in tune with my body. And I think a lot of women who deal with chronic illness, they know their body very well. And I have an instant, it's almost an instant in my moment it's in my gut. It's always in the gut. Always. I can know if I get that weird twinge and it's telling me, any weird twinge means no. Any weird twinge. And then my head starts thinking, do I really want to work with this client? Do I really want to deal with this person? Whatever. Is this doctor right for me? I'm saying, if my body is saying no, my words will say no.
Yeah.
And it's okay. I'm I've gotten so used to saying that word at this point that it doesn't affect me. It makes me feel great, because then I'm like, hey, I don't have to deal with the stress that's going to come with saying no to that.
Yeah.
So when I say yes, I can feel that too, because it's like a weight is not there. It's like it's like a weight may have been lifted because I'm saying yes to someone that I know, that I trust, that will take care of something that I need to be taken care of. But it's a positive feeling, and I feel in my body. But trust and believe, there are some times you get it wrong, and it's still okay to say no when you realize you've gotten it wrong. It's okay to tell a person or a client, or, especially if you're a photographer, there's many times where you get into it and you're thinking, this is a perfect. And then you get halfway through it and you're like, okay, this client is going to drive me crazy. They're driving me crazy. They're so, and then it's like, okay, you know what? Actually, it's okay to say no.
Yeah. And rein it back in.
And rein that back in.
Yeah. It's funny. Here's what's working for me. I don't have a chronic illness. However, I do have chronic pain. I had a horrible tailbone injury about 3 years ago that flares up every now and again, and it's not fun. I mean, if anybody out there has ever hurt their tailbone, it is like the worst. But here's what's working for me in one aspect of my life. I have the Desire Map planner. It's like a weekly planner written by Danielle Laporte, and I'll put a link in the show notes for anybody that's listening. What I love about it is it has journal prompts at the first of the week, and so you just sort of take an assessment of how last week went and focus on your, where you're headed for this week. And one of the prompts that I always get every single week is, what do you want to stop doing? And what do you want more of? And, even just that simple ritual, and I block out an hour first thing in the morning on a Monday morning to go through this journal prompts, have a nice cup of coffee, create that sacred space for that. And I think for me, I'm certainly a creative. I'm certainly type A. The ability to write things down each week and sort of take an assessment of what I want to stop and what I want to start is really powerful, because I think this is where your brain, your mindset comes into play with all of this stuff. Because what happens for me, I'm curious if this happens for you, Nikita, I get on the hamster wheel, and I'm really good at running fast on the hamster wheel. Like I'm like the best, fastest little fat hamster wheel that runs like 90,000 miles an hour. Like, look how fast Mary's going, right? And I forget like what's most important in my business, and I forget what's most important in my life. I just keep running, right? Go, right? But that process of actually slowing down and saying, okay, what do I want to stop? What's not working? And what am I going to start? It helps me get right into that mindset immediately. There are things like that help you with your mindset?
Yes, there's a saying, her name is Kimmy Brooke, and she says, you got to go slow in order to go fast. And I truly believe that. I think that we are in a world where everything is just super fast. We want it instantly, even in our business and our lives. We just want everything just to be happening right now. But for me, I've really taken the time I journal the same as you, because it allows my mind to just get rid of whatever it is that needs to be out on paper, and then I can let it go.
Yep.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And when you're dealing with a chronic illness or chronic pain, holding on to negative anything is a weight you cannot afford to have.
Yeah.
You can't afford to have it, because you have to have your strength to carry yourself every single day. And so I definitely agree with that, to take the time to recognize what you love, do more of that, and be okay with saying no to things that, are not for you. And if it's no, but you need to have it, get somebody else to do it for you. I mean, there's tons of people who do stuff for you.
Yeah. And that's what I like about the planner, is that there's always a section that says, well, what do you need to say to someone? It's like, oh, I really need to ask my partner to do this, or I need to, ask for help from a coworker, or I really need to put a boundary up with this client, or whatever it is,
right?
That I think is important. So why do you think it's important to accept and acknowledge your chronic illness instead of like compartmentalizing it? Let's go back to that.
I'm going to speak to this as far as my own journey, because I think everyone's a little bit different when it comes to this. Even when I coach my clients, it's so interesting how they come to this understanding on their own. But for me, it is truly about, I was giving it too much I was giving it too much power. You know what I'm saying? Like I was walking around and yeah, it sucked. Yeah, it sucks with an S. It still does presently today. I, had so many horrible experiences and things like that with my doctors and people, and just the attitude overall about women in pain is just really negative. People are just nasty. So for me, I had to be like, you know what? It doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. It doesn't matter. It's my story. Like, why am I afraid to share my story? This is who, I always say this is a part of who I am. This isn't who I am. Who I am is, the person that, is joyful and funny and creative. And I love people and I love networking and I love business. And chronic illness, endometriosis, and all these other things are parts of me. They are not me.
Yeah.
And so when I accepted that, it became like therapy. Like it became literal therapy when I would go on Instagram or Facebook and just in general and just saying, hey, yeah, so today was a crappy day. Like today I had a hard day, but here's what I did do. And I feel like when you show up like that it was one of those like aha moments that I didn't realize I was having until I accepted it, that the more I shared my actual journey, the more people were like, oh, you're a real person.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was like, wait a minute, you didn't know I was a real person before that? Like, I don't understand that. But it was because everybody puts on this fake facade when they're running a business. Like, there's this iceberg on the top and everything's, pretty and chiseled. But underneath is all of this crap that you had to do to get to the top.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there is an unspoken fear in a lot of us as business owners that if I show you my soft underbelly of vulnerability, then you are going to, as the client, are going to really start to doubt, can she do it? Can she execute on whatever product or service that I've purchased?
Yeah, so here's the beautiful thing about that not true mindset, that not true fear, is that first of all, no one has ever said that to you. No one has ever actually said, oh, because you have a chronic illness, I don't believe that you're going to show up. What happens is when you take that power of what's going on in your life and you share it and you keep showing up, you're showing that your consistency and your power of doing what you love is stronger than the challenge that you have.
Right.
People will show up in spades. They will show up in spades because they believe in you. They become your cheerleaders. They become your support team because they are like, oh my gosh, this girl is going through so much, but she's doing and creating these beautiful things. She's a wonderful person, but dang, she's dealing with this, but she's still killing it.
And it shows a lot about your integrity. It shows a lot about your perseverance and the ability to really show up in a powerful way, right?
Exactly. And that's the thing. If you do have a client or someone that's potential that's like, I don't believe you can help me, then why did you come to me in the first place? Yeah. That's my first question.
Yeah.
Why did you come to me in the first place? And then number two, if it's a client that you really think that just doesn't really understand, because that is another number two. People just who don't have a chronic illness may not understand it. They may think like, oh, well, they're going to be incapable of doing this or that. Here's the proof. Go to my Instagram page, go to my Facebook group or my page or my website. Look at my testimonials. Look how I am showing up every day.
Yeah.
I'm showing up. Can you say the same? And most likely your client, if you're a web designer or if you're in the creative space of creating services, they're not showing up every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. And again, I think that this is when you lay that foundation down early on in the process, even before they've reached out and made contact with you. So if you share your story in your social media feed or on your blog or in your About You page, then they're learning about you as they go along and they're building that picture. So it's not like, they've hired you as the wedding photographer. They've had it booked for a year now. And then all of a sudden the day of the wedding, oh yeah, by the way, I've got this thing going on. And that's going to be like, they would be very disappointed at that day, that juncture, you decided to tell them really what's happening with you versus if you had said it very early on in the process and they go, right, I know that this is a thing with this photographer, but I love her work and I love who she is and I trust her. And that's part of the decision-making process. That's a whole different way to slice this up. So yeah, I think that saying it early on it makes a lot more sense.
What's beautiful too is instead of you mentioned just a second ago, says, but she has this thing. I think what happens actually is they say, and she has this illness and she's amazing.
Yes.
Like it's not a but anymore. It becomes like, oh, she's amazing and she has all these things and she's amazing.
Yes.
It's not a but like, oh, oops, she has this thing and it's going to cause an issue. No, it's like, and it makes her amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what you want your clients to feel like, okay, it makes her amazing. You're crazy for not wanting her. You know what I'm saying? So it's the words. It's the words we say. It's the words we present to our clients. And it has to start in your story. It doesn't mean that you have to tell all your business. Mm-hmm. It just means sprinkling it in. Mm-hmm. If we really did tell everybody how we actually felt every single day, that wouldn't be a pretty happy-go-lucky looking photography Instagram page.
Yeah, that's called oversharing, folks.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So find your happy place when it comes to that, and relate it to the positive things that are happening in your life, and you'll see it's a beautiful thing when you see it work out.
And it sounds like, again, that's why it's so important to come back to center and truly accept and acknowledge that this is a thing that's part of your life. This isn't your full identity, but this is a thing that's part of you, and being honest with yourself first, and then being honest with your clients. And I dare say probably your vendors, your suppliers and partners as well, so that they know how best to work with you also. So I want to shift gears ever so slightly here, because we're talking about mindset. We're talking about how important that is. What are your thoughts then on how important, if you have a chronic illness, to get your mindset right when it comes to healing? Because some things can be healed, right? And do you believe that it starts here in our mind first?
Absolutely. Whether it can be healed or whether you can find a better lifestyle of dealing with what you're dealing with, it does start with how you think about it. And I know it's hard because, and I'm not speaking, I'm speaking because I have multiple chronic illnesses, and I know how hard it is to get into that positive mindset. I absolutely know. But I also recognize the power in believing that there's something more. I also believe that there's a power in having hope and being positive. 3 years ago, before I found my friend again, that's a whole nother story. She came to me, she was a fellow Indo warrior, and she shared with me, she's like, Nikita, you're fighting so much this thing. Like, you've gone through all the thing. I had gone through all the surgeries. Nothing was working. And I was just feeling like, well, that was it. There's nothing else for me. There's no more hope. Like there's nothing else. And she's like, there's nothing wrong with accepting, like, yeah, this is a bad place. Like, you don't want to be here. But it's okay to look for things. It's okay to look for possibilities and try different things that aren't necessarily in mainstream medicine world. She's like, try other things. Maybe, I had tried diets. I had tried all these things. She's like, why not try, some essential oils or some acupuncture and then, those things were so far away from my mind because I was dead set on that this was how it was supposed to be. Yeah. And I feel like if your mindset is closed, if you have a fixed mindset that this is it, after you get to wherever it is you think you need to be to solve all the issues, that you can't see past that. You can't see the possibilities. And so for me, when I started to look at the possibilities and try and, be more positive and surround myself with women who are also being more positive, then I started to have more joy and more power to tell my story, because it was like, oh, okay, well, maybe someone else might have something to share with me. And that's actually happened to me, where now that I'm sharing my story of how women reach out to me and they're like, hey, have you tried this? I'm like, you know what? No, I'll look into it. You just never know. Yeah. But you gotta be open. It's a mindset. You have to say, I I am okay. You have to say, I am okay. I am breathing. I'm living today. And there's a possibility that things can change. And I'm looking for it. And I'm open to it. You have to say those words to yourself. Because if you don't, you will close yourself off. Because it's a protection. It's kind of like that cuddly place we like to be. Because it's like, nobody's going to come in here. Nobody's going to, bust that up. Because it's my own happy little sad place.
Yeah.
And you're good there. But what happens is when you open it up and you just see and you start to believe and you ask for help, beautiful things happen. You have to shift it. And I think that it's a decision you have to make. Nobody can make that decision for you. You have to make the decision that, yes, this sucks. Yes, this is going to be a long road, but I can and I will find a way to cope in positivity.
Yeah.
That's it. And you got to make the choice.
And I think that what I hear you say there, I think that surrounding yourself with like-minded people that can pull you up from the depths of deep darkness when you don't have the strength to pull yourself up in those moments. Yes.
Right.
And I also know just from my own life journey that when you start to lose hope, that's when you start to spiral out of control, deep down into that dark place. And, when you get there and it's so dark and it seems so hopeless, it is hard for you to see with your physical eyes, but also with your heart of how could we possibly get ourselves out of this? Like you just can't see a possibility better than this. And that's where, again, surrounding yourself with people who will help you see. And, that's the beauty, I think, of having a strong female community surrounding you, especially with other small business owners. Because, girl, we will tell you things that didn't work for us and then also tell you things that did work for us. And, that's where you can start having that really valuable and wealthy conversation of information sharing, of like, hey, have you tried this? Hey, what about this? And then you go, oh, I hadn't thought about that. And that changes an aspect of your brain of building that hope again and finding possibility and seeing opportunity where other times looked pretty bleak. Yeah. That's where the power lies, regardless of if you have a chronic illness or not. That's the secret to really having a successful business in my mind.
I totally agree. Community is so crucial for any success in anything. Like your right community. My grandmother used to say to me, you have friends for different parts of your life. You have the friend you might go shopping with. You have the friend that you might, need to pick you up. You have the friend that's like, no, here's the organization, like do step A through B, C, D, E. But we have to find that crew. We have to find those people that really connect to what you need. And that means you have to have multiple faceted women in your life. And they all have to be able to want to give and share. And for me, that's where the healing really kind of starts. It starts in your head, but it also starts with the people you surround yourself with.
Yeah. And I think that there is something to the idea of healing, something that's been part of your identity for so long, whether it's chronic pain or chronic illness or something otherwise. People who believe that they are not just going to be succumbed by cancer. That, well, that's it. I've got a cancer diagnosis. I, better just call off the rest of my life. Those people tend to, from, research and things out there, they die sooner than others who do have hope and say, you know what, I bet there is something else that I could do differently. I bet there is hope. There is a different way to live my life and to get back to thriving. So I think you're right. I think that it does start in your mind. And when your mind starts to falter, you got to find that people that are going to help you pull it back together and keep persevering forward.
And the right people will catch you. Like, even if you didn't reach out to them, the right people, they'll catch you before you fall.
Yeah.
That's why it's so important to get used to saying that no and that yes, because those people are the ones that you want in your corner to catch you when you don't even see yourself falling in that hole.
Yeah. So again, if you guys are curious about Nikita and what she does out in the world, I highly, highly recommend that you check out her website. Craftedtothrive.com is where you'll find her. And also her podcast, She's Crafted to Thrive. If you search for that in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts, it's a great listen, especially if you listen to the Simplifiers as well. Lots of good stuff there. And she can show you simple, practical ways that you can share your story, your truth, when you market yourself and your own business. So please do go over to her website and check that out. Also, Nikita is offering to our listeners a nice little freebie that if you are curious about that, to learn her 3 steps to selling authentically online and to help you grow your business with customers who love you. So make sure to go over to our show notes to click and download that freebie from there. It's craftedtothrive.com/selling, or you can just simply go to the simplifierspodcast.com and find it there. So Nikita, I've got a couple of questions for you before we wrap up that I like to ask all of our special guests. And again, thank you so much for your time and sharing your story today. I know it's not easy to be like, look, there's this thing that's about me, and it's scary. I get it. So Nikita, tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or maybe even poking holes and challenging your belief system right now?
Actually, I'm reading a book called Mindset by Carol Dweck. I love it. It's a great book, especially if you want to understand the different types of mindsets and how we kind of all shift going in and out of different mindsets, which is just an interesting thing to me. So definitely, that's a good one. Ooh. If you haven't read it, you need to read it.
It's so good. That's where she was talking about the whole fixed mindset and growth mindset. Yeah, and it's so powerful and so simple. So yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for that book as well. Tell us, who is one person either in your network or maybe even a client or somebody maybe even had on the podcast recently you just feel is up to brilliant things out in the world, and that we could shine a spotlight on, and who knows, maybe even potentially interview them on the podcast, and why?
So one person, and I know you told me one person. It's so hard. There's so many people. But I'm just saying there are so many women that are amazing. But yes. I recently had Jasmine Starr on the podcast, and she is a photographer, and she's a Latina, and I love her to death. She's just one of those women that if you're looking for a safe place to tell your story and to start slowly, you want to land in her tribe. And I've definitely landed in her tribe, and I love her to death. She's super sweet. You definitely got to have her on the show.
She's great. Jasmine is great. We definitely want to connect with her and get her on soon. Okay, so gratitude and simplicity, in my mind, go hand in hand. Tell us, what's one thing you're grateful for these days in your life?
I'm super grateful for my husband. He is a support and love and jokester and comedian. He lifts me up every day. I'm just very thankful to have him in my life, for sure.
What's his name?
Maurice.
Holla to Maurice. Let's everybody send him lots of love right now. We're all psychically sending Maurice lots of love. Oh, I love it. Again, if you want to learn more about Nikita, make sure to check out her website. Craftedtothrive.com is where you can find her. And where do you hang out online? Is there one place in particular you like to hang out the most?
I'm on Instagram pretty regularly. I'm there all the time. So you can find me there at Crafted to Thrive as well. That's my handle on my profile.
Perfect. Okay, great. So we'll put the links to that and your Facebook page in the show notes as well. So if you want to click over and connect with Nikita, it's very, very easy there. So my last question for you today is this. And again, thank you so much for being open and vulnerable and sharing your story with us. There's somebody somewhere that is listening and has got a lot of healing or just sparked a new thought for her. So thank you for that. So, like I said, someone somewhere out in the Wild West in the world is listening to this episode right now, and maybe she's just gotten a diagnosis for something that she was not expecting. She did not sign up for this. And all of a sudden, this is having to change everything in how she runs her life and how she runs her business. What's one thing that you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
Just thinking about that question makes me want to cry. I would whisper to her, it's okay. You're going to be okay. And you're not alone. I think that's a huge thing for her to know. She's not alone, and that reach out to me. Reach out to me. Reach out to other women. You would be surprised by how many women are having this moment with you. And so you're not alone. I think that's the biggest thing. I think that was one of the things I felt the most, is just feeling alone. And I think you are not alone.
Yeah. And your life is not over, girl. So
no,
pick yourself back up, contact Nikita, and make it good.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was wonderful.